Hello, and I hope that you're enjoying Cambridge Festival 2022. My name is Saskia Frisby, and I'm one of the researchers at the MRC Cognition and Brain Sciences Unit. Today, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my research, which is all about how the brain understands the world. And to illustrate what I mean by understanding the world, I'd like to start by telling you a story about what happens when we don't understand the world properly. Once upon a time, there was an ordinary lady, the manager of the successful florists in London, who went to the doctor because one day she was experiencing problems with her memory. She was struggling to recognize objects in the world around her. She was struggling to remember people's faces. Reading became more difficult, and she was occasionally found it difficult to understand what people were saying to her. The doctors carried out a lot of tests to find out what was wrong with her memory. And one of the tests I'd like to tell you a little bit extra about. The test was to look at line drawings like this picture here and to copy them straight away, and then after the picture had been taken away. So this lady was shown a picture of a duck, as you can see. And when the picture was still there, she copied it with great artistic flair. Once the picture had been taken away, she was asked to copy it again after 10 seconds. And as you can see, the duck is still very lifelike, apart from that it has an interesting thing growing on it here. Ah, yes, she said, as she crossed the extra appendage out. Yes, that one only had 2. After 60 seconds, she was asked to draw the duck again. And this time, she produced a duck that had 4 long legs. It's very difficult for us as ordinary people to think about what it must be like to have a version of the world in our mind that is this skewed. The lady in question had problems with her semantic system. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more about what the semantic system is and what role it plays. Now, if you can bring to mind a concept, any concept, a cat, a glass, the world, the notion of joy or freedom, for every concept in our minds, we can name lots of things about it. Perhaps we can describe what it looks like. When we hear the word, we know exactly what it means. When we see the word written down, we know exactly what it means. And for every concept we have in our minds, lots of senses, we call them sensory modalities, contribute to our understanding. When we get information in any one of these sensory modalities, for example, when we hear the word dog, we can instantly bring to mind information in another of the sensory modalities, for example, what the dog looks like. But it's important to think about the fact that one modality never totally dominates. Even though, for example, we can't describe what joy looks like or potentially what a chair smells like, it's definitely important to have different sensory modalities contributing to our understanding of this concept. Imagine what would happen if just one sensory modality was important. The basketball and the orange look very similar to one another. So we might think that if only vision was important, that these objects are very, very similar to one another. On the other hand, if only sound was important, perhaps you would think that a basketball and a banana were very, very similar to each other. Actually, we know that the orange and the banana are much more similar to each other than either of them is to a basketball. Not only is the semantic system capable of integrating information from different sensory modalities, it's also capable of integrating information over time. We know that birds fly, and we know that they lay eggs. But it would be very, very strange if we were to see a bird flying and laying an egg at the same time. Yet the semantic system is capable of integrating both these properties of birds into its representation. Finally, the meanings that we have in our minds are very, very flexible, and they can be managed in a situationally appropriate way. When we think of the sentence, "Let's play the piano," the brain can instantly provide us with the fine motor movements that we need to accomplish that. Whereas when we hear, "Let's move the piano to another room," fine motor movements aren't much use, and it's gross motor movements that are needed. So how does the brain do all those jobs? Well, at first glance, taking a look inside the brain doesn't seem to tell us much. We know that information about what things look like is processed by regions of the brain at the very bottom. Information about what things sound like, somewhere in the middle, and information about what things feel like and how they move much closer to the top. That doesn't really tell us anything about how these different sensory modalities of input are linked together into multimodal representations of meaning. What scientists at the Cognition and Brain Sciences Unit and other institutions in the past have found, however, is that there's an extra part of the brain that's particularly important. The anterior temporal lobe, just behind your temples, is important for collecting information from all these different modality-specific regions and integrating them together, just like the hub of a wheel is connected to all the spokes that join onto the outside of the wheel. Not only does it connect all the modality-specific areas together, but it also creates its own aspects of meaning. And we think that it's these representations within that region that are fully represent information from all different kinds of sensory modalities. It's these representations that recognize that an orange and a banana are more similar than either of them is to a basketball, and that a bird can fly and lay eggs, even if it doesn't do them at the same time. So, what was going on with the poor lady who produced for us the four-legged duck, and various other participants who've drawn their own four-legged ducks in the past? That lady and these others were suffering from semantic dementia, which is a neurodegenerative condition where parts of the brain waste away. It's important to recognize that semantic dementia and Alzheimer's, though both types of dementias are not the same thing, and that dementia is kind of an umbrella term. For example, Alzheimer's is one type of dementia, semantic dementia is another type. And yes, they're very different things. And when we look at that lady's brain and other people's brain when they're suffering from semantic dementia, using structural MRI, which is a way of taking pictures of the brain, we see that the anterior temporal lobes here are much smaller than they are usually. This anterior temporal lobe is not affected so much, but you can see that this one is much, much smaller. This diagram is just to show how this picture of the brain works. This is as if we were looking at the person from the front, and you can see that this part of the brain is just around here. So, what are we doing at the Cognition and Brain Sciences Unit to change not only our understanding of the way the semantic system works in ordinary people, but also to change our understanding of and develop theories for and treatments for semantic dementia and other kinds of neurodegenerative disorders? Well, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the project that I'm working on personally at the moment, which is about how we can use brain scanning to help out with these aims. We would really love to be able to see the anterior temporal lobe and other important parts of the semantic system with MRI scanning, because that would enable us to compare and contrast patients and healthy people directly, and not only to take pictures of the brain at rest, but also to watch it at work. However, in order for a scanner to work properly, it needs to be able to create a magnetic field that is very, very uniform. And that isn't helped by having pockets of air around. Unfortunately for us, sinuses are pockets of air, and the anterior temporal lobe is located right next to them. That means that when we look at pictures of the brain at work with functional MRI, we see all kinds of weird things going on, little black holes and white lines like this. These are not part of the brain. And that makes it very, very difficult to see what's going on. Yes, this is the brain viewed from above. So what I personally am working on at the moment is using the extra strong 7 Tesla magnetic resonance imaging scanner at Addenbrooke's to try and tackle this problem. The 7 Tesla scanner is something we're very, very lucky to have. It's one of only 7 in the UK, and it has a magnet in it that's strong enough to not only to pick up 1 car, but 7. Don't worry though, it's perfectly safe to be used on human beings, and no radiation is involved. I'm hoping that by tweaking the way that this scanner works and the way that it takes images and applying new principles from physics to it, that we will one day be able to see the anterior temporal lobe with 7 Tesla imaging, even though we've never seen it before. And just before I finish, I would like to thank all the wonderful people with whom I work on these kinds of ideas every single day. Not only are we based at the MRC Cognition and Brain Sciences Unit in Cambridge, but we have collaborators based in Kyoto, Kobe, Madison in Wisconsin, and Baton Rouge in Louisiana. And we hope that together we will one day be able to map the semantic system in great detail in healthy people and develop therapeutic treatments for people suffering with semantic dementia and other disorders.